I was 14 and there was a supermarket right by my school and I'd go in and buy donuts with my lunch money, and then I would double my lunch money by selling them all before like a reception.
That's kind of
always be
hustling.
Always hustling. You got it.
Yeah.
Welcome to Honey Never Sleeps, powered by the Nectar Group, a podcast talking about all things sales and business development. Today I've got Chris Erichsen, the CEO of HumanInc. Introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Chris. I am the founder and CEO of HumanInc. We help big businesses like enterprise corporates deal with, you can say, transformation, culture, new products and services. I hail from Denmark originally, been out here for 16 years working in Malaysia in the region.
16 years. I'm at 4.5 now, so I've got a little bit of catching up to do. I understand from your background, because obviously you've been running HumanInc for a while now, and that's really exciting, but that's not where you started. You were entrepreneurial when you were a teenager, when you were 16. Tell us a little bit about that spirit that you've had and how you've grown from there.
Yeah, I think like many entrepreneurs, I was kind of a wild young guy who didn't really like schooling too much or rules or the idea of a corporate life. So I was kind of an activist under the left, out demonstrating and stuff. I was very passionate about music and kind of social change. So that was in a way how I discovered the need to have a company. It wasn't like I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but we were doing stuff that we required to send some invoices, right? So I guess we had to register. I got my brother to register the company because I was too young. So that was the first company I ever did, like doing DJing and running clubs and festivals and stuff like that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Much different from HumanInc then.
Very different in some ways, but I think there's always been kind of a red thread later, kind of social innovation, so working on youth problems and social issues, using kind of innovative methods in changing how we did that. Then later here coming to Malaysia, working with startups and working with government around, again, social issues, social entrepreneurship and so on, running incubators. So there's in a way been a red thread, at least for me, but it wasn't like a clever plan.
It was just you allowed the journey of life to take you. I didn't have a similar path, but I remember when I was a teenager, I think I was 14, and there was a supermarket right by my school, and I'd go in and buy donuts with my lunch money, and then I would double my lunch money by selling them all before like a reception. That's kind
always
of
be hustling.
Always hustling. You got it. So HumanInc, you're responsible. I've got here 100 global brands now. Looking at sustainable business model. Where you obviously started with maybe 1-2 customers. How did you end up achieving getting to work with 100 global brands? Like, what was your methodology?
I think initially it was very much kind of more coming from the purpose that we heard from corporate people that what we were doing with startups was interesting. They wanted some of that creativity, some of that speed and agility and kind of customer obsession that startups have. What if we could get that in our product team? What if we could have that in the C-suite? Instead of just looking at spreadsheets and our own kind of internal thinking, what if we could fall in love with the customers and the customer's problem? Okay. So that was in a way kind of how what stirred us. Then it was like, okay, but we're no one. It's just an idea. We created a PDF with our offering. Right? It was literally like that, and like whiteboarding and like and then it was like, who could we target first? Who do we know? So it was more kind of mapping out who do we know. We found out that okay, there's budget for learning. And HR seems to have a pain point, so let's go to understand them a bit better. And it was quite an exotic world to me at the time. I didn't know much about the corporate world. I had never worked in the corporate environment. I worked more on the social side and government and foundations and so on. So it was quite exciting and kind of exotic to meet all these leaders saying we want to be innovative, however, we have all these problems.
However, red tape.
Exactly. And then we kind of discovered that from doing the learning programs, then we got in touch with more senior business leaders and not just HR. And they're saying, well, that thing you're doing, could you do that with my team? Or we have another problem, could you look at this? So then the trust was established, even though we weren't, a big global consulting brand or a big, international business school or something like that.
So I guess how you started is you tapped into your network. Right.
Yes.
So you looked at who you knew, and then started just having open conversations.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much, and also I guess we kind of applied our own methods in terms of kind of research and design thinking. So building personas, who's the target persona, interviewing them, kind of mapping their pain points, what they're trying to get done, who influences them, what's the power dynamics inside the organization. So you can say in a way strategic selling.
Well, you're working with enterprise accounts as well, so it's not like a
it's
quick
B2B,
wins.
Exactly.
What did you do to then start to expand? Because 100, I imagine you didn't do it all by yourself. Did you build a team? Like, how did you
Great question.
scale?
Yeah. I think very early on, actually already in kind of drafting the idea for the business, that was kind of the discussion, what are we trying to do here and what does success look like? So I was very clear that I didn't want to build, Christoffer Erichsen consult or something that, CE consult or something, that it was really about the purpose of humanizing business. So therefore the name HumanInc, and what's that sweet spot between the humans you call customers and your business, what's the sweet spot between the humans you call employees and your business, and how can you increase that overlap in the Venn diagram in a sense, right? So it was very much a team effort from the beginning. I made all the mistakes of trying to do everything myself, being the smartest guy in the room, being terrible at hiring my friends, and I did a lot of those mistakes. Then I was lucky to get some amazing humans in who could challenge me, and I also learned from the lesson to kind of create space for them and say, you figure it out. And that was quite a long journey, I would say. I had been on that journey even before HumanInc, but this was really where I think I honed some of those things that work for us now.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. I mean, I hired a few friends, did not work out at all. I also tried to do everything myself, and then when I was letting go, I essentially became like a micromanager because I couldn't really let go, and maybe they weren't doing it the way I would do it. It takes a lot of energy to pull back.
Yes.
And a lot of lessons of pain, right? With bad hires or bad fires, or, so I completely understand. So as you started to take a step back and you started to expand the business, I understand that a lot of what you do is increase customer experience by way of the employee experience. Tell me more about what that actually means, what that entails. How do you make humans less robotic and more human? Like, how does that work?
I think, first and foremost, you can say, why should business leaders care about it? Because it's already tough times, and maybe a recession is coming again, and what happens in globally affects also the Malaysian market, right? So there is this question, or Southeast Asia, of why should you care about employee experience? Isn't it enough we're paying them and you're giving them a bonus as well, and incentives in the sales team, right? And we're a cool brand that is nice to be associated with, it's good on your CV, so isn't that enough, right? But I think there's no doubt that there's less loyalty in customer side, there's also less loyalty amongst employees. Employees are not just looking for a paycheck they can get anywhere, but what they're looking for is a great experience, right? And who do you work for? Why should I believe in the brand? How am I treated by the organization? They say that people is the most important asset, but do they treat me like one? And is there that connection between what I believe in and who I am and who I want to become as a professional, and how I'm treated by my colleagues, my bosses, the company? So winning organizations have to ask themselves these questions. What do we think about? What does leadership mean? What does culture mean? If we want to have excellent customer experience digitally, what experience are we giving our employees? If we're annoying and disturbing our employees with terrible HR systems and finance systems and internal communication, how are we going to deliver a great experience? You can say the equivalent of a restaurant, right? If you're the owner of the restaurant is throwing knives in the kitchen and shouting at people, which isn't completely uncommon in the restaurant, for instance, from some of my chef friends that I've heard from. No wonder that there's a fly in the soup, or someone is not really interested in customers having a great dining experience, right? So there is a strong correlation between great employee experience (EX) and great customer experience (CX), right? In terms of how you can work with it is basically applying design methods, right? So really researching the humans you call customers, knowing what they expect from you and finding ways to delight them, ideating and being creative about how could you do that at low cost and high quality, high impact. Testing it before you roll it out to reduce risk of failed innovations. And similarly internally, if you want to understand your employees, let's say you have your new strategy to go from A to B, we want to become this kind of company in 2 years or whatever. We want to be more digital, we want to be faster to market, we want to disrupt and grow in Thailand or whatever. How are you going to get your people behind it?
Yeah.
How do they feel about that? What is it they love about the company right now? What is it they hate about the company? What are the biggest problems in the daily? Things like that, right? And then how can we be creative and maybe involve them also in saying, how could our HR processes change? How should we welcome new colleagues? When we say goodbye to someone, how should we say goodbye? When we promote people, how do we prepare them for that? Because the more you involve people who have the experience of receiving an experience, the more likelihood you're going to find the real pain points and the real gain points. And I mean, I spoke with a lady that had done some research about the Great Resignation, and she told me in Malaysia, and so one of the findings was actually that when they asked CEOs and C-suite and HR whether they had addressed the Great Resignation and improved employee experience, they said, yes, we've done A, B, C, D projects. But when they talk to the employees, they're like, but nothing has improved.
Yeah, it's the same.
And it's probably not true that nothing has improved, but it's a moving target. So what was maybe amazing and progressive for a brand to do 3 years ago is now just table stakes. Everyone's doing that. You have the engagement program, you have a mental wellness program, you have I mean, everyone has that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think even we have a lot of that. We're a very small business.
Exactly. And it's also expected, even in SMEs, it's not no longer that, oh, that's a googly thing to do.
Yeah.
It's like, an SME company producing tiles also need to consider that, right?
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there. I was thinking about when I was starting out, we would hire a lot of people and our onboarding experience sucked. And then because we were fully remote, we were not very good at sort of building culture remotely and things like that. And we went through high turnover, certainly in our first year of business. And that massively impacted customers. And so if you think of that on a higher scale, the impact is going to be a lot more expensive. So we've, not to the extent that you guys do, obviously from what you've described, it's a very complex process of uncovering a lot of information and also making people feel comfortable with sharing actually how they feel, right? Because you tell your manager says, how can we improve? No, it's wonderful.
Love it around here.
But we're trying to instill culture and so we're trying to look at ourselves like a football team, being very team driven, results driven, more of a sporting activity. We're not a family, we're a sports team looking for results because we're a results orientated company. So trying to establish that in all our line managers and every member of the team, always talking about it, celebrating when somebody's following a culture, just things like that. And then all the benefits that you start to try and think about providing, as simple as healthcare. Healthcare for a small business can actually be expensive, and so it's very complicated. How do you get, going back to what we were just joking about managers and feeding back to your manager, how do you get the actual humans, the employees, to open up and be really honest so that the company can make real change?
Yeah, I think you can say that change is both a company question and an individual question.
Yeah.
And for the company to change, the humans inside the company need to change, right? So there is an element of leadership development, and it kind of starts at the top. The leadership needs to actually be open to change. And to say it's not everyone else that has to change, because sometimes senior people have that feeling that everyone else should change, and
I'm doing a great job.
If not, we'll change them. We change the set. So I think that there is that modeling the behavior that you are vulnerable, that I don't have all the answers, that I'm on a journey myself, that I want feedback and I'm asking for it and I'm acting on it, and I take it seriously is a great first step. There are of course techniques as well, and a lot of this comes in the kind of middle management, because I think that's a big part of the problem now that we're hearing from clients. It's not so much the C-suite have already been on leadership development, they have already attended the training or read the book, and maybe have been long enough in business that they know that the people element is important, and they can see that came up more the last couple of years as more critical for the business. But it's getting the next levels to actually be able to do that in the daily when they're not around. that is the hard part. And how do you quickly build a kind of different style of leadership? It's not just getting them to be better at what they've been doing before, it's maybe even letting go of some of the things they've done before and starting something new. And that's where you could say there are some, feedback, you could say mechanisms or ways of giving feedback that is very powerful. Building safe space in terms of psychologically safe space is very important. We know that that has been linked in also from research to high performance. There's some elements of, if you look at your team, do you really know why they're there in the first place? Because not everyone is there for the same reason. Someone is there to get it on their CV, someone's trying to save up for their wedding.
For the ladder.
If they lost their job, what would be their biggest pain point? If they got promoted, would that even be a good thing? Not everybody wants to get promoted. So do you actually have true empathy with the people in your team? So investing in having non-work conversations, getting to know your team members, know their family, know their situation, know where they come from, where they're dreaming of going, I think is very important to be able to work well with them. And if you understand them better, it's easier for you as a leader to get them to understand what you're trying to get done and why it's important.
Yeah, that's why I think I really like your name, HumanInc. We're not employees, we're not customers, we're humans.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this, I'm a business owner, so it's different for me, but a lot of people have this divide between life and work.
Yeah.
And everyone's very obsessed with balance and so forth. But I feel like there's so many rules that come up. I'm at work, so I can't talk about my life, or but that's affecting my work.
Yeah.
And managers don't talk to people about what's going on outside of work either. So you don't really know each other as humans, not very surface level. I always try to live my life the same, regardless whether I'm at work or outside of work. I think we've had meals where I've actually invited a friend to a company meal, no problem, we're all here having a good time. And I think that's, this wall can make a massive impact. So it's great that you're coaching these managers to actually find out who this human being is rather than who this employee is.
Yeah, and that starts with you being yourself, right? As you mentioned, right? And I think there are a lot of middle managers who's started their careers before becoming managers under bosses that were really bosses, right? Not leaders. Yeah. And they have in a way maybe copied some of that, those kind of more top-down ways of leading, where it's do so because I tell you so, using fear and reprimand and making you look bad in front of the team if you messed up, not tolerating any mistakes. It's about perfection, not about learning and trying, and, So I think that kind of, and the longer hours, the better, not so much the outcome or whatever. So I think that there are a lot of kind of bad habits that's sitting in both SMEs and corporates around these pieces that needs to be kind of unlearned, and building the confidence to do the new thing it's not easy, right? It will take years, to be honest, for the corporate world and SMEs to move from where they are and where they come from to where they need to be. Right?
So how do you taking this back to the sales side of things, obviously you're talking about a lot of change management within these businesses and big entities that you work with. It's not an overnight thing. It's not like a 1 hour session or a workshop. This is consistent training required and consistent coaching. How does that work on the sales side then? How do you get a bank to commit to work with you for a long period of time to make this change a reality?
I mean, I think it really varies, because depending on the organization, they may be more or less mature on this journey. They may have more or less internal capability. They may already be running programs or have worked with other consultants. So it really depends where they're at, which problems are important to them, and it's about them and making them you could say benefiting and get impact, right? But there's no doubt that the more strategic they are and the more they see this journey, the more we can help them. The more transactional they are, we just need a 1-day training on it's very hard to really create impact there.
Yeah.
But you can still go in and do a good job at that and use that as kind of the bridgehead.
Yeah, like a monkey's paw.
And then
into
from
the
that
door.
experience, there would be someone in that experience that now wants to talk more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's often what happens, is that it could start as a training requirement and end up becoming a strategic
Mm-hmm.
project. Or it could be we only want consulting on this piece, and then through us discovering together with client where they are and where they want to go and what's holding them back and what is kind of the next steps, then they realize actually there's a bit. So there's also a bit of client education. Probably not too dissimilar, right? So
I imagine there's a lot of client discovery that you have to do, and getting them to open their eyes to problems as well.
Yeah,
because these are human issues. These aren't necessarily task related or finance related and very black and white. It's a massive area of grey, right?
Yeah, in many ways, yes, but there's also a lot of hard data around. If you don't invest in your middle managers, you will have higher attrition. Attrition costs you this much. How many people have you got reporting to those middle managers? How much attrition have you got? So there are ways to calculate the harder ROI.
Yeah, of course.
We know from a kind of motivation standpoint that your manager has the biggest impact on your motivation, not your core values or how cool the brand is.
What
right?
the town hall.
So you leave the boss, not the company, right? In many ways. So there are very hard reasons why you would want to develop good leadership and good culture and the right skills in the organization, right? So to some extent you can make it pretty clear, even to folks who may be seeing the soft human side as a bit soft, you can actually draw the parallels based on science.
Okay. And so, you've obviously been building a team of your own. How have you trained them to be a highly efficient team that are coming in and dealing with these human issues all day long?
I think like many startups in the beginning, you fail at that. You think that you're either going to hire someone like yourself who can do what you know how to do, and then why are you such an idiot, right? Or you hire people that are smarter than you, but you're too dumb to see it. That can also happen, right? Or too stubborn to let other people take their approach, right? So I think I made those mistakes early. So I quickly realized that this is actually about building a culture, building a team, building an organization. And I got people in that were really good at those pieces better than me, that actually do the coaching, do the onboarding, have a more I'm not the most structured person, I'm kind of creative big picture. So I found people around me that were good at structuring stuff, working with the finance things, working with the people elements in more detail. How should the onboarding look? What's a fair package? How do we do offers, contracts? I mean, all those things that I dread doing and I'm not great at.
Basically,
Absolutely, you got me.
I'm exactly the same.
So getting the right people around you, I think, is key. But there's also an element of the culture and the core values, sticking to those. Also, when the times are tough, because it's easy when you just won, let's say, your biggest project and your finance is looking great. Then it's easy to say, oh, we should do this, we should do that. That kind of company. Let's pop a bottle, that's easy, but I think it's really when you're under pressure and people are making big mistakes, client is upset, or during the lockdowns we had a lot of pressure on us cash flow wise, because clients didn't pay, they were trying to preserve their cash flow, they didn't sign orders, maybe we wait first, those who have signed, let's wait with delivering so we don't get the invoice, so everyone was kind of trying to kick the bucket, right? So we want a lot of pressure. Should we start firing people? HumanInc, really? All the amazing people that have made us till now, should we kick them out? So we basically burned all the cash flow we had built up, protecting the team. But then when work and demand came back, we had the team and we had them behind us, and we delivered more work in 6 months of 2020 than we had done in the entire 2019.
So the gamble essentially paid off.
It paid off, right? And we were very clear, like we're not gonna remove people. We take it kind of collectively.
I remember when we were talking the first time, I was sharing a little bit of our mistakes, and interestingly, when we were making all of our mistakes and costing ourselves a lot of money, culture was not a priority.
No.
It was results.
We can wait with the culture, right?
Yeah,
because
first
I gotta eat, then we can worry about art on the wall and niceties.
And just internal culture of being results driven, team driven, consistent, all of that stuff that we are today, it didn't matter to me. And when it started to matter, which I would say was about January this year, is when I really started to prioritize it. We started bringing people to the office, not every day, twice a week, hybrid. We started trying to instill that culture, and little by little we saw improvements every month in our results. To the point now we're on I think this is the 3rd month in a row we've overperformed the last month. So 3 best months in a row in terms of performance.
Well done.
And honestly, the training has improved slightly, but it's mostly the same. The onboarding has improved, but it's still more or less the same kind of stuff. What really has changed is the culture and how we work as a team and how we're together. And that has massively impacted results.
Yes, that's the thing. That's the thing.
And people forget that.
Yeah. But it's also, if you have never experienced it, that's one of the problems is if you're sitting in a technology company or an oil and gas company or whatever, and you look around in the industry, it's not like the next company is super progressive and we're the ones who don't have it. So even if you have moved around to 3 or 4 different brands in your career and now you made it to Colonel or General or whatever, it's not likely that you worked somewhere that had that way of leading. So that's one of the problems, is that we're talking about something that people haven't experienced much. So it's a bit like if you never worked out, you never done sports, you realize, like I did during COVID, that actually I'm probably 10, 12 kgs too heavy. This is probably not a good age to be overweight. I should probably change my diet and start moving my body out of the seat, right?
Yeah, I think I just do that.
We all do, right? But if you've never done it before, it's hard to imagine how it feels compared to if you then get into it and you look back 2 years later, you're like, I can't believe I used to eat that way. I can't believe I used to sleep so poorly. I can't believe I used to feel so bad about myself. The feeling is very different, and you would never want to go back. So I think that's in a way the journey that companies and individuals, leaders are on, is that kind of transformation, really.
Yeah. It's happening more and more. I think there's such a huge demand from the generations coming up, and sometimes I look at what they ask for and think, you're so entitled. But the reality is it is impacting success, efficiency, results. It's an exciting journey. So I was thinking, you're going in and instilling different cultures and structure and fundamentals within teams. What are the fundamentals that every team should have?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's hard to say that every team should have, because it depends a bit on what business they're in and what they're doing and how they're working. But I think, you need to be very clear on why the organization exists and why the team exists. You need to be very clear about what goals the organization is trying to achieve and how that team, what is it that this team is doing that contributes to that. So understanding the purpose and understanding the strategy and what success looks like, and what's our contribution to that. Who are we serving inside the organization? Because in many cases you might be an internal team, you're actually not dealing with customers, right? Maybe you're in kind of indirect enabling function, for example. But no matter whether you're an internal focused or externally focused or a mix, you need to understand the purpose and what success looks like. You need to have some level of alignment around how do we work here, right? So the leaders and the organization have a responsibility to not just let people invent how we work here, but actually, especially if you want to scale, to kind of have a recipe a bit, right? You could say, whether you like McDonald's or not, it's probably enabled them to get the scale that they have today, that they have really formularized everything that they do. Of course, we're not necessarily in the fries making business, so there's different levels of empowerment, right? And depending on what you're doing, I think there's some elements of allowing for, you can say, as much empowerment as possible, stretching people to grow. I think is very important. Enabling collaboration and really having clear dialogue about what's working, what's not working. So a feedback culture is very important. Clear ownership of tasks is very important. So those are some of the elements. If you're in a function that is about doing new stuff and where there's a lot of pressure to do new stuff, then of course the ability to understand customers and research the problem that you're solving for. Find out what is the problem actually. Maybe you're given or built something like this, but just testing, is that actually what the people who should use this thing, is that really solving what they're looking for? What is it they're looking for? Because sometimes you just have customers come and say, can I buy 100 of these from you? You might want to ask, so if you had 100 of these, how would it help you? What are you trying to get done? Well, you see, I need my logo here, or whatever. Right? So I think that kind of the problem behind the problem, that kind of is important. So there are some elements like design thinking and agile that when you put that into teams that work with the change, that work with innovation, that work with customer experience, those skills are very powerful to have. But that doesn't mean every team, let's say you have a team of cleaners in your corporate offices, they might not need this, right? But they definitely need to know why they're cleaning. They definitely need to know what clean means. They definitely need to know how do we work with hygiene and so on, and how do we communicate with each other, who's our most important stakeholders, things like that.
Yeah, I think what you were saying earlier as well about everybody in the business, no matter what the team is, are kind of aligned to the same goal and understanding how they fit into that goal. So I have a business coach, and we were talking a while ago about what's his name, Alex Ferguson, and how when they were winning championships at Man United, every single person at that club, from the ball boy to the striker, were all aligned to win the championship. Every single person was fully on board and believed that it was possible.
We won. It wasn't just the 11 players on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. It's every single person there, from the security guard, the guy who cleans the boots. Everybody is there for the championship. And I think that's something that people forget.
That's powerful.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. Yeah. That's what we're trying to create.
Yeah, nice. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and as well, have you read, I think it's called The 5 Dysfunctions of Teams?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're very much working around that book at the moment within our company, trying to get that fear of conflict gone and get people communicating.
People don't have enough conflicts, right? I mean, we had just this week we had a client who was like, well, we have some bad conflicts, and how do we deal with conflicts for new managers, right? And I basically said to them, well, it's not that you have too much conflict. After talking to them, it sounds like you have too little conflict, and the conflicts you do have are bad, and therefore you're trying to avoid them. But if you, as a manager, as a leader, are seeking good conflicts, saying, let's get disagreement, let's get ideas on the table, let's get everyone to write down what's the biggest problem, here's some post-it notes or some markers, or everyone write down something you disagree with that I did in the last month, or whatever. Like, if you show people that it's okay to disagree and that it's not who says what, but it's who has the best argument, that helps us all make a smarter decision. No one's as smart as all of us, right? If you model that behavior and you do that for a while, you will get way more value out of your team, instead of everyone just sitting nodding or thinking this will never fly, but they're all smiling and saying let's go.
I think that happened a lot to me in the early days, and it also maybe I didn't listen so much. I think I was hosting an event once, and my team was like, it's probably a bad idea. No, let's do it. It's gonna be great. It ended up being good, but it caused a lot of stress to deploy it in the time frame that I set, and I didn't create a space for conflict for people to communicate really how they were feeling. So it's important to also not just enable them, but listen when they do it as well.
Yes, and sometimes it's not whether you're right or the team is right, but perhaps it's how can we make this better together? Maybe the call has been made, this is happening, but what's the resistance, and how can we make that go away or be as small as possible? Or how can we make it more implementable, since you guys will be involved with all these things? How can we make a good experience? Because I do think it's okay to also be clear that just because I'm asking doesn't mean I'm not going to make a call. That's my job, right? But I will definitely listen, right? So I think even if we go the other way than what the team wanted, at least they know that they've been heard, right? And I think sometimes leaders are not so good at, they either give the impression that it's a free-for-all and we can just vote on it, and maybe in some instances we can, but in some instances that's not an option.
Some leaders are like that though. Some are very team-driven, family kind of leaders, want everybody on board. But of course you've got to make decisions. Certainly when you're the CEO of the business, you've got to come up with the big ideas and vision and go, okay, now I need you guys to execute it.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. You've been quoted to say, finding a sweet spot between being profitable, delivering great customer experience, and having happy employees. Can you tell us about your ideals in this sweet spot?
Did I say that?
What's the
I probably
sweet
did.
spot? What is that sweet spot?
I think you can say that this is in essence what I was talking about before, right? Which is, of course, a business needs to be profitable, unless it's a social purpose business or a government organization, then maybe it doesn't. But most businesses do. So everyone needs to understand that. and what does profitable mean, and what is it we need to do better to be more profitable, and what does growth look like. At the same time, if you are kind of a exploitative business that is taking advantage of your customers, you may have great benefits from it right now, but customers have more and more choice, are less and less loyal, and you're going to lose out. And there's been a lot of businesses who've been doing that, just making it hard for you to leave them, tying you down with all kinds of terms and stuff like that, right? And almost treating their customers as their enemy, right? And there's this kind of internal, almost laughing at customers or hating on them, right? And stuff like that. Oh, these idiots, and you know, we got the deal, idiot. That kind of the nasty side of entrepreneurship, you can say, or the nasty side of corporate. Where that's the thinking, right? I know there's some businesses who basically have kind of I think it's HubSpot, they have a teddy bear in the room that represents the customer. So we shouldn't never talk about customers internally in a way that customers wouldn't enjoy or appreciate or feel respected, right? So that's kind of a good acid test, the way we talk about customers. If they were here, would they be insulted? Right? So that part I think is important, and not just do we give them value, but can we delight them? So what would the extra thing look like? And often business folks think of it, well, that's too expensive. Or maybe it's too expensive to not delight, because your competitors will try, right? So can you find clever ways to delight? That is a win-win, right? That's the best business and the best friendships, personal relationships, is when you give and you enjoy giving, and because you enjoy giving, the other side reciprocates, right? And that same thing goes for employees, right? Do you really know what you need from people? Have you defined that, and have you hired for it and promoted for it and developed for it? And are you ensuring that people get their fair share of joy? Right? Maybe even to the point of should you recognize them and let them get shares or things like that, because that can also be a way to make that kind of was it Manchester or Liverpool?
Manchester.
Okay.
I'm not a fan. I'm a Chelsea fan.
All right. And me neither. But get that club feeling where everyone is in a way invested, right? And then there's monetary and non-monetary ways you can do that. Right? But because I think it's that kind of organizations that have that sweet spot would be way more powerful and way more ready for the future, right?
I've been getting a lot of, not to praise my team too much, because that's not what this session's about, but I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from our customers about how our customer success team go above and beyond in sharing information and market analysis of what they're uncovering, and you know how they adapt and change our strategies very quickly without waiting for the customers to go, hey guys, what's going on? And they've really liked that, and they said that value we didn't, when we were purchasing, we weren't expecting, and that's made us really feel like you're a strong partner. And what makes that customer experience so important, which is extra work, and in some cases extra cost, because we're actually training some people at their company for free and things like that. But that makes us so sticky. Because when a competitor comes and says, well, I can deliver exactly what they do, but we're going to be cheaper, then you're like, hold on, if I move, I'm going to lose all this extra stuff that I'm not paying for.
And what's the next delight I'm getting, right? And the trust and the relationship that you build is also coming through those extras, and sense that flexibility, or that thing they never thought even thought you would notice, that you noticed, and say, oh, just for someone like you, we have something like this, right? I mean, who doesn't like to be seen and understood, right? And that's what a lot of, I think, B2B businesses kind of forget a little bit, is that they only see the brand and are not so good at seeing the individuals buying. How is it risky for you to buy that IT solution I'm providing, right? How does that mean career risk for you, bonus risk, family? Are you not going to be able to pay a mortgage, or can you buy the bigger car you're dreaming of if this IT project goes wrong, right? For example. Right? So I think understanding both the upside for the individual you're selling to, as well as the downside, is key. Right?
Because it's not just the logo. Because if you think of SaaS, when they're reporting their improvement, they're like, we've added 100 logos, they're very logo specific. Forget about the humans.
But what's actually the story, and that's much more relatable, right? How have you changed lives? Our customers, employees are now experiencing these benefits, right? They can now focus on being more strategic because we had that solution. That can blah blah blah.
And I know that you use technology to create more human experiences. What kind of technology have you found yourself using more and more for your clients or internally to help expand the human experience? Because a lot of times technology is being used to remove the human experience, right?
Yeah. So we have had interesting discussions around this also internally in terms of what we believe, right? I think what we're seeing is that there's maybe some differences between what we're using and what our large enterprise clients are using, right? I would say that what we're seeing is generally that there's a misunderstanding of more technology means less human, right? We certainly believe that the future is about using technology to be more human. So for example, a few days ago I spoke with someone who talked about using a software that can listen in on customer calls and help you be more empathetic depending on how people speak. This customer is angry, this customer is confused, slow down, you're speaking too fast. So you can kind of give salespeople or service people that kind of advice, right? So decision-making enablement with AI, for example, is something that's a good example of this, right? I think we're seeing virtual technologies coming out from, we're partners with Meta, right? So they're also looking at some of these questions, right? And generally you can say with the metaverse, there's going to be a lot of both AR and VR opportunities to change how we communicate and have better communication. No doubt that we have all experienced bad technology that the software don't understand what I'm trying to get done, and we sit and pump our fist in the keyboard. That definitely happens too. So I think some of the simple I would say tricks is that it's a lot easier to get data on your customers in terms of their experience. And there's several technologies, I'm not going to sit here and promote any of them, but there's several technologies that can do that. Do you actually understand your customers, and are you looking at that data? Are you actually then taking the big data and doing some focused conversations with customers, right? In either focus groups or in-depth interviews, right? So those are some examples where you can in a way link your new digital whatever with how are people feeling, right? And how can we make that digital thing feel better at scale. So it's not necessarily either you have to have an expensive person sitting and holding the client and walking them all the way through, or you have this cold digital automated thing that everyone hates, right? It's actually our favorite apps, I'm sure your favorite apps are apps that understands your need very well and that doesn't create that pain point, and that's really the power of design, right?
Wow. You've had an amazing journey from 16 in the DJing to now changing how banks work. If someone was following your footsteps, somebody just coming out of uni, kind of getting that entrepreneurial spirit, I guess what would you say to them?
Well, I think it's very expensive to give advice, to very generic advice. So I would say it really depends what they're looking for. If you're thinking about people who have a dream to be an entrepreneur, I would say, honestly, for most people, unless you're uniquely smart, I would say get some life and some work experience first. Work for entrepreneurs and study how they work. Let them fail on their budget or other people's money. Get to understand the industry, but also very importantly, understand your own aspirations and get to know your own purpose. Develop yourself and figure out what is it that I don't have now that I need, skills-wise, experience-wise, leadership-wise. What are those pieces looking like, right? So that's probably where I would start if I'm just coming out of uni, because the likelihood of you succeeding as a founder when you're 22 is very, very low. Right? I mean, we know that from stats. However, I would also not want to I would want to encourage the next Mozart or the next Beethoven or the next Steve Jobs, who is going to be that odd one that despite the stats could beat it, right? So who's to say you can't, right? And there are plenty of kid entrepreneurs and whatever that's already like mind-blowingly good, right? At 15. So I would also say that the world is also changing, and maybe the importance of experience is coming down, and mindset and speed of learning is becoming more important, right? So it could be that you understand, because you're 15 or 22, you understand everything about people who's 22, that those geeks who's 35 are already old and they don't even get the joke, and the VCs who's 40 or 50 or 60, they don't get the joke either. So there could also be situations where you could very well see a pain point worth solving. But you might want to have some people around you with more experience than yourself.
I agree.
Still, right? So find some mentors, find some people you can learn from who can see your blind spots.
I mean, it's really good advice, because a lot of people, and of course there are going to be the odd few that beat the stats. A lot of people, they're like not just jumping, but they're flying before they can crawl in some cases.
Yeah.
And I think if I didn't have the experience that I have today before starting, Nectar, I don't know where I'd have gone. No. I don't think I'd have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
You learn so much from making mistakes and seeing other people make mistakes. And if you try to fly before you can crawl, well, you'll hit the ground in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good advice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm so impressed with what you're doing here.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's been a fun convo.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, and stay tuned for more Honey Never Sleeps. Thank you very much.